It sits at the western tip of Lake Ontario, the midway point between Toronto and Niagara Falls. A port city, once known more famously for its steel mills, now known for a low unemployment rate, a construction boom, and a thriving arts and cultural scene. Is Hamilton a city on the rise? Joining us now to help answer that, Ryan McGreal. He's editor of Raise the Hammer. Marvin Ryder, professor of marketing at McMaster University's DeGroote School of Business, and Jeremy Freiberger. He is chief connector, cultural strategist, and founder of Cobalt Connects. That's a nonprofit organization in Hamilton that builds creative partnerships, and it's good to welcome all three of you around our table here at TVO today. I want to start by reading something Christopher Hume, a Toronto Star columnist, wrote a few months ago in Canada's largest circulation newspaper. He wrote, "The map remains the same, but Toronto and Hamilton have changed places. Until recently, Steeltown was a self-hating city, dismissed by the rest of the world for its coarse ways, unwashed residents, and knuckle-dragging politicians. Today, as Hamilton rises from the ashes of its grimy industrial past, Toronto is consumed by flames of its own setting." Okay, Marvin, is he onto something there?
Well, I'll say partially true. I'm not sure I'd like to say our grimy industrial past. Maybe I can give you some context. In the 1950s and 60s, you'll find articles written about Hamilton as being the city of Canada's future. If something was manufactured in Canada, a version of it was made in Hamilton, whether it be cars or lifesavers or blue jeans. And I think politically at the time, people felt these industries were too big to fail, that famous expression we use about banks. And so people coasted on that for the longest time. And then due to trade and other things, we began to see them whittle away. We lost those industries, but we kept the steel mills. Famously, the view you see over the Skyway Bridge. But even those fell on hard times. There used to be 30,000 people who worked in those steel mills. Today, total between U.S. Steel and ArcelorMittal Dofasco, only about 3,000 people. So 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, this city, Hamilton, went through quite a cultural identity, a crisis, if you will, trying to figure out where they are moving forward. And I think today, it is a city on the rebound. I think it is coming back, although I wouldn't say it's back yet. There's a lot of green shoots. They're growing. They need to be nurtured. But now we're seeing a new economy rise based on education, medicine, on the arts community, a great place to live. The motto today is a city, best city in Canada to raise a child. That's a whole different vision of Hamilton than 25, 30 years ago.
Ryan, it used to be called the ambitious city when I lived there. Does it feel that way today to you?
It's starting to feel that way again after a long absence. It seems like for a long time, Hamilton forgot what it meant to have big plans. We became a city that was desperate for any crumb, and we had a beggars can't be choosers mentality. You know, we didn't demand excellence from developers, we didn't demand excellence from builders and from companies and even from ourselves. And so we're a city that accepted mediocrity for a very long time. That's starting to change. You know, people are looking around and saying, you know what, we can do better, we can demand better, we can produce better.
Jeremy, if things are better, what do you think accounts for that?
A good number of things, and I would sort of put the stake in the ground the same place that Marvin did. Maybe somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago, we had this identity crisis as a community, and we could have stayed, and I think for a while got stuck in a rut of waiting for some magic project to land in our city. Who's that massive employer that's going to come in and solve all of this? And at a point, as a group of, whether it's citizens or organizations and institutions, we said, we need to redefine who we are, not forgetting who we were and who the past was, but take all those assets that we gathered over a 50, 60-year period or whatever it was with manufacturing, education, and healthcare and all of those components, and figure out who we are as a collective as opposed to who we are as a singular thing.
It felt, Marvin, that you know, you make the comparison to Pittsburgh all the time. There were two steel-making towns. Sure. Once they stopped making steel inside Pittsburgh, the city kind of found itself. And it's now, I mean, it's a cultural mecca that, in a way you never would have imagined 25 or 50 years ago. Has Hamilton learned that lesson, do you think?
Well, I'm going to say no, because, of course, we still make steel in Hamilton. The change in employment is much due to technology. So what the steel companies have figured out is how to turn out the same volume of steel with 1/10 of the workforce. So we still have very active steel mills, at least in the case of ArcelorMittal Dofasco. In the case of U.S. Steel, it's more of a finishing steel. The steel is made down the road at Land's End, Townsend area down in
Nanticoke.
Nanticoke, thank you. I'm trying to remember the name. So we're still that steel company and still town, but we've taken some of the brownfields and started to bring them back to life in some new ways. I just want to piggyback on Jeremy for a second. If you go back 20 years ago, the mentality in Hamilton seemed to be we needed the one big thing. one big thing has changed over time. For a while, it was the NHL team. If we could just get an NHL, that would be the big. Oh, a casino. If we could just get a new football stadium, boy, everything would be right. And I think people realize today it's not about one big thing; it's about 100 little things. As you weave those together, that's what creates a community.
That's a breakthrough, isn't it?
It is.
That goes back to our entrepreneurial roots as a community as well, that we talk about the ambitious city and whatnot. And a lot of that was starting up of all kinds of businesses at the forming of a city. And for a while, we kind of fell asleep and said, we're going to accept that we've got a handful of major employers that are sort of carrying the weight. And I think we've returned to that idea of we're a city that if you've got an idea, you've got an inspiration or whatever it is, I find, and starting my own organization, feel that Hamilton is the kind of city where you can wake up in the morning and say, if you want to do something, just get off your butt and start doing it. And I think that's a magic part of the city, that it's the phase we're at right now, where people are seeing that come from small business to something that's coming to fruition. It's gone from me in my basement to a 10-person company.
Right.
It's 100 of those that make something.
There's a T-shirt that you'll see in the fashionable James North District that says, "You can do anything in Hamilton." And this is something that I think people didn't believe was possible even 5 or 10 years ago. And I think both of you have really cottoned on to this idea that for a long time Hamilton was an economic monoculture. And the problem with having a very small number of large employers is that entrepreneurial spirit kind of goes away. You know, when that starts to recede, then suddenly people become emboldened, hopefully, to start stepping in and saying, well, you know what, I'm going to create my own opportunity. And you see that happening a lot with young people coming out of university. Those jobs aren't waiting for them, so they're starting their own businesses. And in many cases, when you have enough of those small young businesses, some of them grow, some of them take off, and that's starting to happen.
How much do you want to put Hamilton's success, such as it is, at the foot of the following? In Toronto, a $1.5 million house could be purchased in Hamilton for $250,000.
Or 350 anyway.
Okay, 350, say.
Yeah. Well, certainly that's part of it. So what we've seen in the last decade is a lot of people who never would have considered venturing into the bounds of Hamilton, discovering the city due to economic forces. They're saying, let's look at the property. Oh my gosh. Jeremy mentioned the artistic community, people who need a loft space or a workshop type space, studio space. They were getting crowded out of Toronto. They just couldn't afford to be here. I think reluctantly came to Hamilton saying, I don't know, is this really an artistic type community? But was charmed by the types of spaces that we had, spaces that maybe even local citizens had kind of forgotten about and had neglected. And so we have this whole renaissance today of young artisans moving into the community, bringing that fresh blood in. I just want to also take on Ryan's point for a second. You may not know this, you talked about the ambitious city, but if you go back to the motto of the Hamilton family, I love this, and I think it really expresses this new expression: the way is through, not around. And it's this kind of gritty thing that says, right, we're going to get up and we're going to do it today. We'd lost that for a while, and I'm not sure why we lost that. I think it was part of the hearkening back. Why can't we go back to what we were in the 50s and 60s? We have a new generation of younger leaders who are saying, well, the past is the past. What's the future? And the future today is triggering off the medical industry. We have 2 very large hospitals, the second largest one in the province. We have 3 large educational institutions between colleges and universities. Can we trade off that? And can we give those people a reason to stay in the community and share their ideas going forward? Quality of life on one side with the artistic community, great land prices on another, but also an environment that allows them to grow and develop those businesses.
Jeremy, I've always maintained, and in fact, I spoke to Mayor Bertina, did a Google Hangout with him the other day, which should be on our website if people want to watch that. The worst PR Hamilton has going for it is that Skyway Bridge, as people drive by and see, admittedly, what is a very industrial North End, which used to provide people with a lot of jobs, but which today just looks like a blight on the city. If that's all you know of Hamilton, it's not a very good advertisement, is it?
I would agree that it's not, in that it sort of paints a single picture of the community. And there have been a number of projects we've been involved in where we're inviting people from other cities to come to Hamilton. And there used to be this big effort to make sure that people came make them get off on York Boulevard. Don't take them down Main or whatever. And I hear less and less of that. And in that, I think we're maturing in our understanding of what that steel sector means to the community. And that moving forward doesn't mean shooting our past in the face, that we have to own that and be proud of that and where it got us. So I think there will come a time, and we've talked about it 100 times in the art community, what can we do with that with that visual that recognizes what it is, but maybe celebrates it in a different way, in a new way.
Got any answers?
I suggested Bateman. I suggested Robert Bateman. Just how about a 5-long mural of the natural side of Hamilton, about 20 feet tall, just on that one side. Maybe that would make all the difference in the world.
He's out in British Columbia now. Let's get him on the phone and see what he's doing.
Semi-retired. Maybe he's got something to do.
Maybe he's got time.
I know in one German industrial city, they actually took a steel mill that had shut down and turned it into a museum. Yeah. People can actually walk through it and experience it. They can see the rolling mills. They can see the coke ovens. That's an exciting opportunity, I think.
Interesting. We hear as well that the unemployment rate, and Mayor Bertina told me this the other day, the unemployment rate in Hamilton is significantly lower than Toronto's. Is that true?
Yes. So I can help you out there. Forgive me, as the business professor on the panel, let me dive into the numbers. Hamilton's unemployment rate last month was 5.5%. In Ontario, it was 7.5%, and in Canada, it's 7%. So my God, this tremendously low unemployment rate. Why is that? It's because Hamilton has one of the highest retirement rates. So unemployment measures the percentage of people who are working. As we've downsized our economy over the last number of years, a lot of people, men and women in their 50s, late 40s, early 60s, who could be working, have decided to take retirement packages. So to flip that statistic around, if you look at something called the participation rate, what percentage of your population is working, we have the lowest percentage. We have something like 59%. The Ontario and Canadian numbers are like 63%. And that's what leads to the difference. I wish I could say it was all due to economic policies local. The other thing I would point out, unlike, say, a city like Thunder Bay or Sudbury, where you are this one little pocket and nothing around you, Hamilton is a key part of the western end of the Golden Horseshoe. So if I become an unemployed Hamiltonian, I am not restricted to look for work in Hamilton, and thus the growth, and there's been significant growth in this corridor between Hamilton and Toronto. I can find a job in Burlington, Oakville. So I'll give you another statistic that bothers people, and that's out commuting versus in commuting. Once upon a time, if I go back again to the early 60s, more people came into Hamilton to work than left. Today, it's the other way around. Nearly 23,000 people a day more go outside the city to work than come in. About 60,000 go out, about 37,000 come in.
So is that a good news or bad news story?
Well, it's good in this sense. It's the same number as it was 10 years ago. That number used to be going up at about 5,000 every 5 years. It's now stopped, so we've created opportunity. But for this economy to really then come home, to be a sustainable economy, we need to bring that number down. And I think we're beginning to turn that tide. But for the moment, that unemployment rate is low, not just because of what's going on in Hamilton, but what's going on in the region.
Jeremy, when I was growing up in Hamilton in the 60s and 70s, the thing to do on the weekends was to get on the bus and go downtown, because there's lots of good stuff going on downtown. The mayor will have to forgive me for saying this, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Downtown does not look great, I think is a nice way to put it. Maybe a harsher way to put it is, downtown is a mess. And any young kids who are living in the Hamilton area these days, they don't go downtown, they go to the suburbs, they go to the malls in the outlying areas, the Ancasters and Dundasses and so on. What do they have to do to get downtown fixed?
I think we're dealing with a number of the issues that are going on downtown. We need strict heritage policy, in my mind. We need to be preserving what that downtown is as a built environment and understanding that value. We need to be encouraging, and James Street, north and south, and sort of starting to splinter off of that. We're starting to see the benefits of investing in entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs, that it's a lot of individuals sticking their neck out and owning a property, investing in that property, caring for that space. And I think we're on the way. I mean, we've got McMaster now making a choice to move into the core again. So the work of individuals and small businesses now started to make downtown, I think, a better place to hang out. And therefore it's now attracting those people that want to be next to that. So I think a lot of what downtown needed was a facelift to a certain extent, so people caring for that pride of place, and increased residential. We need to have people living in the core and making that their space to own and have pride for 24/7, 365.
I was just going to say that. The one thing that keeps Toronto's downtown vibrant is that people want to live downtown. It didn't seem to me, I mean, I'm back in Hamilton all the time, it doesn't seem to me that many people want to actually live downtown. Is that a problem?
I would say that downtown probably hit bottom around 1999, 2000, 2001. It stabilized, and now I think it's on the rebound. And I think all the things that Jeremy said I would agree with. I would add that in Hamilton we need to get better at recognizing that our streets downtown need to be people places. And our downtown streets, our downtown in general is crisscrossed with these 4 and 5 lane one-way
streets,
thoroughfares
yes.
that blast through neighborhoods, blast past homes.
Great if you're commuting.
It's fantastic if you want to get through the city in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you want to live downtown, if you're a business owner and you want to have a store that people will walk in, if you're a parent walking your children to school, it's not a pleasant environment. Hamilton needs to get better at recognizing that part of the value proposition of a vibrant downtown is that it's a place that people want to be and that it's safe and welcoming and inviting.
At the risk of arguing with your point of view a moment ago, I think this 1999 timeframe is a great thing to talk about. The downtown is a lot friendlier than it was 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I grant you, if you limit your view to this one block area right around the center, we call it Gore Park.
Yeah.
Yes, that still could use a big facelift, but James Street North has undergone quite a renovation. James Street South has undergone a
Hess
renovation.
Village.
Jeremy didn't mention it, but we have this monthly art crawl. It culminates to the big super crawl held in the fall. I forget the numbers, 50,000 people show up, 100,000 people show up to celebrate arts in the artistic community. We've got coffee houses galore in the downtown area. So maybe when you were younger, you went there to go shopping. No, we don't have great shopping downtown, but we have these opportunities for people to experience culture in a way they didn't before. Housing, we've actually seen a number of tall buildings. These used to be commercial buildings that have been converted. I can point to 3 or 4 of them. We actually have a former Revenue Canada building that's going through a gentrification into housing, and people are living there. Big news for us, I know this is going to seem odd to your listeners, we got a grocery store back in the downtown core last fall. A grocery store hadn't been there for that same period, 15 years.
Yeah.
Took off. How do you live downtown if you can't buy groceries?
Right.
We fixed those problems. And I think we've got some momentum going there. And even in that one block area, again, I hate to say this, we've had a big news story in Hamilton. We had a bingo hall that was downtown that's closed. It creates an opportunity just 2 months ago.
Okay.
How they develop that will make all the difference to the core.
But again, this is a long time ago. When I was living in Hamilton, the Royal Connaught Hotel was
Yes.
a fabulous, gorgeous,
Right.
Royal York style hotel right in the middle of the city.
Right.
And what's it doing today?
It's shuttered.
It is shuttered.
But
They are redeveloping it though.
And I think it's the best run at redeveloping it we've seen. There's been a number of stop and start opportunities on that one, and I think this one's one that actually is going to get to the finish
condo
line.
and hotel development.
Yeah.
We've got 2 very good developers in Hamilton behind it, and I think they're going to start selling or pre-selling units this spring. It will come back. But you're right, sat empty for 10 years. But this is part of that momentum that people are beginning to hear about in Hamilton, where properties had stagnated and you just put up the hoarding and let it be. We're bringing these things back to life, but we've got to keep doing this. That momentum needs to be nurtured because it could also go back the other way just as fast.
And there's a new breed of developers that are challenging that too. If you look at people like Steve Kulikowski and whatnot that are taking on those really challenging heritage, mixed-use, adaptive reuse properties and investing the time and the money in bringing those spaces back to life. So there are a new breed of developer as much as there's a new breed of entrepreneur that are moving in that are
But
changing
tell me
that
about
phase.
Lloyd D. Jackson Square, which is like the Eaton Center in Toronto for Hamilton.
Yeah.
Jackson Square, is it a third empty? Is it a quarter empty?
Less than that. It's
Less than that now?
I remember my old office was actually adjoining Jackson Square, and it felt like a ghost town.
Yeah.
And you go into Jackson Square now, it is full of people at all hours of the day. And I'm not exactly too sure what everybody's doing, but most of the storefronts are occupied. There's an energy and a dynamism and just a sense of enthusiasm that didn't exist.
Not only did we have the grocery store come in, but McMaster, Jeremy mentioned it,
Yeah.
we're building a new building downtown for the medical arts, but in Jackson Square specifically, we're moving into our human resources, our finance people are taking a corner of that. They're going to be moving this summer. That's another group of people living and working downtown. That adds to that vibrancy. So I think we're seeing this come back, but again, you've got to keep nurturing it.
Yeah.
And as much as at times I've shot at Jackson Square and what it sort of stood for in the core.
I'm sorry, you've what?
I've shot at them as sort of in a negative way and saying that the role they played was initially, I think they thought it was a good idea, but it really did suck the life out of the core. It pulled all the mom and shop pops out and sort of put a lot of them out of business, and that they were creating this sort of mega mall. And they've gone through a very slow transition, properties into understanding, I think, the role that property plays in the core, and they've held some space back over years and saying we're not renting that out, and people have never understood why at some times. Now we're hopefully seeing the benefit of them holding on to that it can be. You can't attract a McMaster into a 400 square foot space. They needed 50,000. Oddly enough, they had one. So there are times when I think they've made bad choices, but I think there's times now when we're seeing some of the good thinking come to life. It was also a space where a lot of the stores in the mall were locally owned, oddly enough. So there were people that were exploring business opportunities in a safe environment of a mall. And I think that's a neat thing that Hamilton has had as well, of these neighborhoods that weren't fully fleshed out and developed, that allowed for cheap retail rent to let you try and open that store you've always wanted to try. So the environment was a bit experimental, and I think that is one of our advantages.
Let me ask Ryan about inclusiveness. The blue-collar people who used to work at the steel mills, for example, do they feel included in the kind of cultural renaissance in Hamilton, or some of the other artistic endeavors, or the healthcare renaissance? Do they feel a part of it?
I mean, I guess you'd have to ask people. I can't speak on behalf of the sort of the blue-collar workers of Hamilton, but certainly there's one thing that artists are really good at. It is taking a contrarian view. It's turning assumptions on their head. There's a little museum on James Street North called History and Heritage, and the owner has done a series of installations on the history of Italian immigrants moving into the North End, getting off the train at Leuna Station, building a life in Hamilton. And he said, he's had people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s come in and say, I remember this. I mean, so I think there has been a really honest attempt to try and connect what's happening in Hamilton now with what happened in Hamilton in the past.
Well, the reason I ask, Marvin, is that, of course, gentrification is something you've seen in Ontario's capital city going back many decades. It's happening in Hamilton as well. Does that tend to leave people behind?
So I'll say there's two different kinds of inclusivity. You're talking about the existing generation as a transition to the new one, and then fair enough to say that there is no easy transition from the old economy of the steel mills to the new economy, which is education and medicine. Today we have at McMaster University an Innovation Park where to work there you would need at least one post-secondary degree. Many of them are going to have 2 or 3. If you're a 50-year-old unemployed steelworker, probably you're only qualified to sweep the floors at the place. And so those people are not buying into that part of it. They are buying into the cultural renaissance, and they'll participate in the arts festivals and those sorts of things. But in terms of the new employment hubs, no. The other thing I think people don't realize in this province is how diverse Hamilton is. Sure, Toronto, 50% of the people who live in Toronto weren't born here, but in Hamilton it's 25%. And where once upon a time that was the Italian and Portuguese community that came here after the Second World War, today we have a whole new wave of immigration, much of it from Asia, some parts from South America, some parts of the other. And no, their connection isn't as great, partly because we're not good at the transition. People bring their credentials from another part of the world. We don't necessarily recognize them, so they're underemployed. And I think this is also a challenge for Hamilton. How do we make sure they feel part of it? Again, they love the cultural part of it. I think they instantly gravitate to that. The economic side of it, they don't know how to get money out of a bank. They're not sure how to be an entrepreneur. So they want to do some of those things. I'm not sure they're quite there, but that will be going forward.
Less than 2 minutes to go here, and I got to ask this. When I was a kid growing up in Hamilton, we despised Toronto, and we competed with Toronto,
Yes.
and it was a big deal. Does that still exist?
I think there's an element of that. I think there's a rivalry there that still exists that's safe. But I think the difference is that I think Hamilton has come into its own to understand the kind of city it is, and that it doesn't necessarily need to strive to be a Toronto or a Montreal or a Vancouver, that we can be comfortable in knowing who we are and be the best at that. So I don't think the rivalry or the hatred or whatever it might have been exists as vehemently now as it used to.
And I don't just mean Labor Day football.
Right.
I mean, that goes without saying. But I
Yeah.
mean, there was a genuine hate-on for the bigger city, and we competed with it.
Well, I would note that Hamilton's motto, the ambitious city, was actually a pejorative that was levied at Hamilton by a Toronto newspaper editor. Oh, Hamilton, the ambitious city. And Hamilton sort of turned that upside down and said, you know what? There are worse things than to be an ambitious city. And I'd like to think that we're getting to the point where we no longer feel like we have to compete with Toronto in that sense. As Jeremy says, we can be who we are, in a more successful way.
In that sense, the battle has been lost. I don't think many people today think that Hamilton is the rival of Toronto. Toronto is almost 10 times the size of Hamilton, so that battle's done. The question is, can we now think of ourselves in a new identity as the anchor of the west end of the Golden Horseshoe? And what do we need to do in that part? I think we've got the living part of it down, this best city to raise a child and creating this kind of environment. I think we also have to think about it economically, and this also speaks to people like Burlington. Where do you want to cast your lot? Are you in this with us, or are you in this with Toronto? Burlington, of course, would tell you they don't want to be in either of those. But I think, again, if we can get into this regional mindset, I don't see it as much, but you mentioned football, and of course in Hamilton, the passion for an NHL team still burns brightly, most recently stoked by Jim Balsley as he toyed with the possibility of coming. They would love to have games between Toronto and Hamilton.
Wouldn't
in
that
fact,
be
we have an
amazing?
AHL team that plays against the Toronto Marlies. They get the biggest turnout for those games. So that part of the rivalry still there.
Good stuff. Oski wee wee, guys. Thanks for coming in tonight. Jeremy Freiberger from Cobalt Connects, Ryan McGreal, Raise the Hammer, Marvin Ryder from the DeGroote School of Business at Mac. Thanks so much, everybody.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.